All right, shalom, shalom. First off, give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Makar Kadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS. Salutes and honors to the elect, all the brothers across the four corners who are enduring in truth and sincerity, all the men, the women, and the children who follow. So, as you can see, this lesson is called E. I don't even know what I'm gonna call it yet. But man, just going into hygiene in the not even really the ancient world, but which we will touch on it, but in colonial times, because the narratives that's being pushed is that the Gadites or the so-called Native Americans were savages, that that they were base men, and that that they had to be civilized. Okay, when the truth is, it was the other way around. All right, we were the ones who civilized the so-called white man. All right, from the food to basic hygiene. All right, to shelter, to all of that, man. And there's nothing new under the sun, like the scripture says. We did the same thing um, back in the times of the it's like my mind is kind of blanking right now. What's it called? The Dark Ages, coming from the Dark Ages into the Renaissance period. All right, but we're gonna get into that here in a second. So Lord's will is gonna be edifying. So let's kick off this video.
When the Mayflower arrived in Plymouth in the early 17th century, the natives may have had a very different opinion of who were the civilized folks and who were the primitives. The colonists hardly bathed, unlike the natives who were proud of their salubrious habits. And we all know what happened after the Thanksgiving dinner, as pilgrims not only gifted natives the food, but also a plethora of diseases. On the other hand, were natives' hands as clean, both figuratively and literally, as popular history would like you to believe? Or did they have some dirty laundry too? Welcome to Nutty History, and today we are looking at what hygiene practices were like for Native Americans during the pre-colonial times. When pilgrims landed in Plymouth, their first encounter in the Americas was with the Wampanoag people, who were clearly not impressed with European hygiene habits. According to the 1965 biography of a Wampanoag member of the Patuxet Nation named Tisquantum, or as Europeans called him, Squanto, he tried to convert Europeans into daily bathers. But his mission didn't yield much success, unlike the other missionaries that arrived later in the Americas. It was absolutely horrid for Native Americans to learn that Europeans were not fans of bathing at all. In fact, Squanto got the opportunity to visit.
And you can just imagine the smell, coming off these devils. The smell coming off them right now. I mean, y'all know that. That so-called, white people smell. Imagine it back then.
Spain and England, and he couldn't believe it when he heard that the then French King Louis XIV had taken only 3 baths in his entire life.
Maybe that is why they got that kind of odor to them.
And it wasn't just royalty. While in Europe, Squanto learned that Europeans hated bathing as much as your pet cat. They might wash their faces and hands on a weekly basis, or if they were truly worried about hygiene, then they'd go as far as washing them daily. But bathing? Get out of here. Europeans at that time truly believed that nobody in their right mind would let water touch the rest of their body. In fact, the separatist pilgrims and the Puritans that followed them to America believed that submerging the whole self in water was unhealthy. Also, taking off all your clothes? How dare you to even think something like that? Scandalous. On the other hand, Native Americans were true savages who would take off all their clothes every day and scrub themselves clean. Can you imagine that? So uncivilized. For them, bathing was an important ritual to maintain a harmonious relationship with not only nature but also the spiritual realm. They seemed to know the importance of regular bathing and washing to keep the diseases at bay and purify themselves inside out to maintain materialistic and spiritual balance.
Yeah, man, because it's in the laws. And Let's matter of fact, let's get a second Ezra's real quick. Give me a second. Yeah, so this is second Ezra's chapter 13. I'm gonna start at 39. It says, and whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanessar, the king of Assyria, led captive away, and he carried them over the waters. So came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they may keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. So when the Gadites came over here, it was to get back into their heritage, which they did straight away eventually. But the whole point was to keep the law, and washing is a very integral part of the law. So let's get a few examples that we have. Um, Let me see where we at. Okay, so this is Leviticus, and this was a rundown, I believe. Um, 15, I'll start at verse 10. It says, and whosoever toucheth anything that was under him shall be unclean until the. Hold on. So I'm at just, man, it's like the whole chapter. Hey, we in it. All right. Leviticus 15 and 1, it says, and the Lord spake unto Moses and said unto Aaron, saying, speaking to the children of Israel, and say unto them, when any man have a running issue out of his flesh, because this issue, because of his issue, he is unclean, and this should be his uncleanliness in this issue, whether his flesh run with his issue, or his flesh be stopped from his issue, it is his uncleanliness. Every bed whereupon he lieth that hath an issue is unclean. Everything whereon he sitteth shall be unclean. And whosoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and do what? And bathe himself in water and be unclean until the even. And he that sitteth on anything whereon he sat that have an issue shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the even. And he that toucheth the flesh of him that have an issue shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and shall be unclean until even. Now, when you go into the research, it says there are also biblical accounts of the Israelites making soap gel from ashlight and vegetable oils, showing the importance of the personal hygiene. It's like showing that the importance of personal hygiene was realized. So you don't think they kept that when they came over here? And it's not just for let's get this in the NOT to see what it's saying. Any man who has bodily discharge. So when it says an issue, it's talking about any bodily discharge. All right. If the man touches you first without first rinsing his hands, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. Any clay pot, come on, it's going in. And then same with the woman. Let me see. It says verse 18. It says, after a man and woman have had sexual intercourse, they must each bathe in water and they will remain unclean until the next evening. Whenever a woman has her menstrual period, she will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days. Anyone touches her during that time will be unclean until evening. Anything anything on which the woman lies or sits during the time of her period will be unclean. So just to be considered unclean was a not necessarily well, it was shunned. You don't want to be unclean, but of course, you're gonna be unclean. If you have sex with your wife, or some situations can't be, avoided. You know, but you know, touching the bed, touching the clothes, touching a person who is unclean, that's very much shunned upon. Touching a dead body, for these things, you know, um, it was looked down upon. So you had to do what? You had to wash your body, okay, clean yourself, and then the next day you'll be okay. Uh, Leviticus 16:4. Okay, yeah. So it says, and he shall put on the holy linen coat, and shall have the linen breeches upon his flesh, and shall be girded with the linen girdle, and with the linen mitre shall he be attired. These are holy garments, therefore shall he wash his flesh in water, and so put them on. So in order to put on the holy garments, okay, you had to be clean. You had to wash before you put them on. So there's a little bit more in the video. We still got a few more precepts I want to go over, but let's get back into the video.
Native Americans practiced regular bathing, washed their hands often, and tried to keep their bodies clean as much as possible. Even back in that age, they knew how necessary the significance of sanitation was to prevent illness and infection from spreading. The Native communities promoted overall wellness. Native Americans didn't have the know-how to produce soap like the rest of the world was doing back then using fat and lime, but they were proficient.
Which is bullshit because we just went over that, they use ashlight and vegetable oils in ancient Israel, so that's been debunked. But they did still use something. So here,
In using herbs and plants medicinally and for hygiene as well. Native Americans used yucca, soapweed, and soapberry to produce lather by mixing them with water. Some tribes also loved using finely powdered clay to cleanse themselves with a mud bath. They also used steeping medicinal herbs to create infusions and decoctions for fancy bathing, like how we use bath bombs and bathing oils. But I know as much as you'd love to know about the pre-colonial range of toiletries, there is a burning question in the back of your head at this moment. We are talking about how much Native Americans emphasized sanitation, but their downfall was caused by the diseases that Europeans brought with.
so I want to back it up real quick and just go over this portion right here.
Were not fans of bathing at all. In fact, Squanto got the opportunity to visit Spain and England, and he couldn't believe it when he heard that the then French King Louis XIV had taken only 3 baths in his entire life.
Yeah, so he took 3 baths in his entire life. Why? Because that's the way that they are. All right, that's just their character. That's who they are as a people. All right. So let's get Job chapter 30. The point really is in 8, but we're gonna start at Job 30 and 1. It says, "But now they that are younger than I have me in derision." Okay. Now, who is they that are younger? It's speaking about the so-called white man, the Esau, right? The Edomites. How are they younger? Because they lost a blessing. Okay, so now they are considered younger. It says, "Whose fathers I would have disdained to have stepped with the dogs of my flock." So they wouldn't. They didn't even want them around their dogs. All right, that's how dirty they are. That's how base they are. You know how low they are. They kiss dogs in the mouth. They do sexual things to animals. There was a guy, it was a professor or something like that. Let me see. Give me a second. Let me see if I can find the article. Okay, here we go. So it says professor arrested for sex acts with pet dogs. So this is why they didn't want their dog to be around these people. All right, it says, "Yea, were to might the strength of their hands profit me, or to whom Saki in whom old age was perished." Uh, let me uh, let me see. It says, "For want and famine were they solitary, fleeing to the wilderness in former times, desolate and waste." It says, "Who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat." So that's basically just talking about just like berries and roots. Just which that's really not too bad. I mean, uh, you know, in these times, the majority of the food came from the earth, so you know that's really not too bad. But it says they were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief. So they were driven away. They were driven into where? To the clefts of the rocks of the valleys and the caves of the earth and into the rocks because that's their original home. That's where they feel the most comfortable at, anyways. This is Petra. All right, this is the ancestral home of the so-called um, white nation. Okay, the Edomites. They lived in these places, and you notice it looks just like a Roman architecture, American architecture, because this is where they naturally stay at. Okay, not only that, but the Caucasus Mountains. You have accounts in Arthur Kirsch's 13th tribe where it speaks about how they wore their undergarments till they disintegrated. What? You think they were bathing? No, they weren't because that's just the way that they are, man. As a people, just a nasty, funky people. All right, it says, among the bushes they brayed, and under the nettles they were gathered together. So, like their language, even we had to civilize them and teach them actual words, teach them language, which, like I said earlier, is similar to when the pilgrims, so on and so forth, came over here, and the natives had to actually try to civilize them all over again. You know, it's like, hey man, take a fucking bath. You stink, bro. Can you imagine? You stink. Bathe every day. Bathe regularly. Since they were children of fools, yet children of base men, they were viler than the earth. And that's just E in a nutshell, man. A base man. Let's see if we can get a couple of these words here. All right, so we got Sham. All right, Shim. Yeah, Shim. Did I get the wrong? I had to get the wrong. Oh, for base man is Shim. Hmm. Okay. That's kind of weird. All right, let's get the Valor. Nakah. Nakah. All right, it says to strike, to scourge, to smite. Hmm. Let's just go to the etymology. morally repugnant, morally flawed, corrupt, wicked, of no value, inferior quality. There we go. There we go. Base, cheap, worthless, okay, hideous. All right. These are synonyms for the so-called white man. Okay. Um, that's pretty much it on the video. I'll leave a description or link in the description. I just want to get these last two little precepts, and we can close it out. And I think we already touched over this. So Leviticus 22:6, it says, "The soul which hath touched any such thing that shall be unclean until even shall not eat of the holy things unless he wash his flesh with water." So I mean, if there's gonna be a Sabbath service, there's anything of spiritual importance going on, you're not to be unclean. So they knew and they understood the the law and the situations that they were being put in and day out. So looks like that was yeah, that's pretty much it, man. We're gonna leave it at that. You get the idea, you get the point. You know, bathing, being clean is part of our heritage, part of our culture as a people. You know, washing and just smelling good, putting colognes, perfume, so on and so forth. But that's what E would do. E wouldn't he wouldn't bathe. They would just put heavy scents of cologne on. Let's see if we can get a count of that. All right, 1 second. All right, so I got a couple of counts here. It says, why was hygiene during medieval times so bad? It says, water was often contaminated with animal waste and other pollutants, so people would boil the water before drinking it. This was done to kill any harmful bacteria or parasites that may have been present in the water. Another hygiene practice in medieval times was the use of perfumes and fragrances. So they didn't wash themselves regularly, but they would, just douse themselves in these perfumes and fragrances to cover up the stink. And we all know somebody that didn't take a shower but put on all this cologne, and you can smell the funk just coming up over the smell of the cologne. Man, it's stop your nose up. Let's see. It says, how did people not stink before deodorant? Before deodorant was introduced in the late 1800s, women used a combination of regular washing and copious amounts of perfume to combat body odor. It says, and at the time, body odor was not considered an issue for men as it was viewed as masculine. You know, stink is stink, nigga. But it says, how did people control body odor in the 1800s? Fuck it. It says, in the 19th century, women and men carried perfumed handkerchiefs. It says smelling salts and sachets that they wore, or they wore nosegay. It says a fragrant flower pinned to the lapel so that when they encountered bad odors, they would cover up their nose or bury it in the flower. But basically, that's it. Lord's will, you learn something new, and you were edified, and we give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh by Shem Shai, by Shem Kadash. Double honors to the apostles and every of GMS. So salutes and honors to the elect, all the brothers across the four corners who are enduring in truth and sincerity, the men, the women, and the children who follow. Shalom.